The villains are very often what makes or breaks a season of Power Rangers. When the villain is intimidating, threatening, or downright scary, it can make the story far more engaging and interesting. When they are not, it has the opposite effect. So today I'm going to be listing my top 10 favourite villains from Power Rangers. Small disclaimer, this is not a list of the most powerful, it's just the best. That could mean that they are perhaps a villain that brought the best story to their particular season, or perhaps they were just really cool. Whatever it may be that gives them that X factor. I would really love to see your own list, so please leave a comment down below letting me know who you would add to this list. Number 10. THRAX. Now, while THRAX isn't a major villain by any stretch, he definitely has one of the coolest character designs of all villains. But also an interesting backstory, at least if you're a fan of the nostalgic throwback like I am. He is the son of Rita Repulsa and Lord Zedd, the original villains of the Power Rangers franchise. Appearing in just 2 episodes during the Operation Overdrive season, THRAX was part of a powerful supergroup of enemies that were nearly unstoppable to that season's Rangers. Still, that shouldn't suggest that THRAX couldn't hold his own if he were to fly solo. I wouldn't doubt the power of Lord Zedd and Rita Repulsa's offspring if I was you. Number 9. OOZE. Now, I know that the Power Rangers movie technically exists in a separate universe as the show, but it's still Power Rangers. Being introduced in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, not restricted to the budget of a weekday afternoon live-action television show, OOZE has the benefit of simply looking a lot better than most of the early Power Rangers villains. His introduction makes it intimidatingly clear just what a big threat he is when he makes short work of both Rita Repulsa and Lord Zedd before quickly damaging the morphing grid and robbing the Rangers of their power. OOZE called on his army of monsters and robots and used his ooze to turn the entire human race into zombies. These are higher stakes than Power Rangers typically goes for. He was a villain that couldn't have been contained within just the TV show. He needed his own movie with which to really showcase his power. Number 8. Lothor. While Power Rangers Ninja Storm had its ups and downs, Lothor was one of the positives. His costume and mask certainly give off very evil vibes. He was the brother to the team mentor and uncle to this season's 6th Ranger, bringing an interesting dynamic to the second half of the season. Not only is he strong enough to take on all 6 members of the Ninja Storm Rangers himself, but he was extremely interesting to watch. As funny as he is fearsome, he made an otherwise average season much more enjoyable. Number 7. MAVRO. In the case of Emperor MAVRO, it took virtually all of the previous Rangers up to that point to join the Mega Rangers of Megaforce in order to take him down. Even then, he spends the majority of the fight seemingly brushing off all of their strongest attacks. For this reason alone, it's tough not to argue that Emperor MAVRO is the out-and-out strongest villain in Power Rangers history. Perhaps. The fact that the main Ranger team matched up against him wouldn't have even been able to make a dent in him on their own definitely can't be said for most other Power Ranger villains, if any. Number 6. RITO Revolto. Unlike Goldar, who started out as frightening but eventually became a bit of an idiot, RITO Revolto was always an idiot. Similar to Goldar though, RITO was devastatingly powerful in battle. Despite his clear lack of intelligence, he was able to take on both Power Rangers and Zords like it was no big deal. And to top it all off, RITO was also responsible for the destruction of the Thunderzords and the Command Center, which are accomplishments that should never be overlooked. Like Goldar, RITO might be a mere general, but he's done more than enough to be recognized for his sheer power. Number 5. MESOGOG. Being the villain from one of my favorite seasons of Power Rangers means he must be a good villain. Again, a character with a really cool, distinct design that you just remember. MESOGOG was not only extremely powerful in terms of both physical prowess and telepathic abilities, but also exceptionally gifted with a superior intellect, which made him exponentially more dangerous than your typical brute force focused villain. And while he started as an alternate personality for Anton Mercer, the adopted father of this season's 6th Ranger, he would eventually achieve pure consciousness and separate himself entirely, meaning nothing but pure evil. Number 4. Venjix. Although it seems reasonable to say that other villains on this list might be able to beat Venjix one-on-one, it wasn't the combat skills of this rogue computer virus that secured him such a high spot on this list. To start, Venjix is virtually an unequaled genius. Some come close, but none surpass. Also, Venjix is capable of adapting to whatever is thrown at him, so if he's defeated by a certain team, strategy or weapon, he'll regroup and devise a way to counter it. Essentially, he's capable of countering anything thrown at him by anyone, given enough time. Lastly, it's almost impossible to entirely snuff him out, as proven by the final shot of RPM, so even if you do destroy him, there's a good chance he'll be back and even more dangerous than before. Number 3. The Machine Empire. In terms of overall importance to the Power Rangers legacy, the Machine Empire, usually led by King Mondo, are significant because they were the first main antagonists in the franchise after Lord Zedd and Rita. They also ushered in a new era for Power Rangers villains, in that they were a single united army to terrorize the Rangers for the season, rather than a succession of mostly separate villains with a main villain behind them, as had been the tradition before, and pretty much ever since. While the primary leader of the Machine Empire changed a few times, what never changed was the army's power and unflinching takedown of anyone who stood in their way, including the Rangers. Beyond that, they had some of the coolest designs in Power Rangers history, with that really cool steampunk sort of vibe. Number 2. Lord Zedd and Rita Repulsa. Okay, so this is technically cheating, having two villains at number 2, but for the most part they operated together, so it counts. As the iconic ruler of the empire that Rita worked for, Lord Zedd was a frightening force to be reckoned with, even after parents complained enough to have the writers soften him up a bit. Apparently, a ruthless emperor of evil, Zedd conquered countless systems before arriving to correct Rita's mistakes on Earth. Almost immediately, the difference in power between them is made apparent, as his putties and monsters were so powerful that the Rangers were legitimately helpless for a while. For even more points in his corner, Zedd also went toe-to-toe with the ultra-powerful White Ranger, and although ultimately defeated, it was due more to a miscalculation than an actual lack of might. Despite his failings, Zedd will always be remembered as one of the most dangerous threats the Earth and galaxy has ever faced. And as for Rita, well, how could I not include the original villain? She actually came extremely close to defeating the Rangers when she used the Dragon Power Coin to create the evil Green Ranger, which is easily my favourite Power Rangers story arc ever. Sadly, as Rita didn't really have much more to her plans than to send out a new monster every week, and when it was defeated, make it grow, she only got this high on the list by joining with Lord Zedd. Now, I wouldn't normally do this, but making this list was so difficult that I had to include some honourable mentions. Amongst the list of villains that almost made this list are Ransik, Astronomer, Dark Spectre, the evil Green Ranger, and Master Org. But the final honourable mention I want to talk about is of course Lord Draken. He would easily have been number 1 on this list if it wasn't for the fact that there has not been a live action version of him, so I chose to exclude him from this main list. But just so it's known, in all of Power Rangers lore, he would be my number 1 pick for the best villain ever. Number 1. The Psycho Rangers. Now, if you have been following this channel for a while, you may have seen this coming. I am a huge fan of the Psycho Rangers. They are amongst the best and just damn coolest villains ever in Power Rangers history. The Psycho Rangers were as dangerous as they were interesting to watch, making for some of the most exciting battles in the history of the franchise. Like any compelling evil versions, the Psycho Rangers had all the power and ability of the Space Rangers, only they were much more dangerous. They were unencumbered by feelings or morality, and only focused on their evil goals. They certainly gave the team from Power Rangers in Space one of their toughest challenges and are remembered fondly by fans. Here's to hoping that they make another appearance in a future show or film. Okay guys, that is it for this list. Do you agree with my picks? If not, be sure to let me know in the comments down below who you would have picked. I'd love to know your opinions. And don't forget that we have just launched a Dragon Ball channel for all of you fans of Dragon Ball out there. I will leave a link in the description, so be sure to go over and subscribe to that if it interests you. Thank you all so much for watching this video, may the power protect you, and I will see you next time on the 6th Ranger.